brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. Welcome to the October 19th, 2020 meeting of the Eau Claire Plan Commission. As an introduction, this meeting is broadcast live by Valley Media Works on Charter Channel 994, WRFP-LP 101.9 FM, and online at valleymediaworks.org. The Plan Commission attempts to conduct its public hearings in a relatively informal manner, with the constraint that we must deal with the issues before us in an orderly and businesslike fashion. We give the applicant an opportunity to speak first, and then others, either for or against a proposal on a public hearing, are each permitted to speak once. We do request that everyone restrict their comments to the issues before us, avoid unnecessary repetition, and be prudent in the use of time. We want to be sure that we have adequate time to review and discuss all items with equal diligence. And with our new format, we ask that if you're calling in from home or on a computer, that you're in a place that can be free of distractions while you're speaking. With that, we will call the roll. Commissioner Christofferson.
Here.
Seymour.
Here.
Brenholt.
Here.
Granlund.
Here.
Greggert.
Here.
Prosnick.
Here.
Wolfgram.
Here.
Obeid.
Here.
And the chair is present. Any changes or mistakes in the minutes from our October 5th meeting? Seeing none, without objection, the minutes are approved. This is a time next on item number 4 on the agenda for an open public comment period for items that do not appear on this agenda, noted as public hearings or public discussion. And I'll take this opportunity to bring up that the Plan Commission is currently in the process of reviewing our comprehensive plan, our midterm review. We just concluded a work session on that, and we'll have another one soon. I guess we didn't set the date yet, but Commissioner Allen.
Would I just get a promotion to commissioner?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's not deserved, but thank you anyway. I believe we're saying the second meeting in November. So
okay.
Unless any objections, Mr. Chair, staff would recommend kind of the second meeting of the month as we go through, just as schedules allow.
Okay. So we have this period during each of our meetings when the public is welcome to come and speak, and being aware that we are in the middle of our midterm update, I hope people will avail themselves of that opportunity to come and speak to us about our comprehensive plan. With that, do we have anyone who has come to speak with the Plan Commission about items not on our current agenda? And no one is responding to that, so we will move on. Item number 3 is a public hearing for recommendation to the City Council for rezoning and to amend the general development plan for mixed-use development known as Prairie Heights residences by Gerard Development at 3301 and 3155 Birch Street. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, as I try to make the old clicker function. Apologize. Even the computer is socially distanced. I'm sorry. Bear with me a moment. There we go. Apologies for that. Technical difficulties is prone to happen to me. I apologize. Yes, before you this evening is a request to amend the general development plan for mixed-use development known as Prairie Heights Residences. It is item 5 in the map here before you, located at the northeast corner of Birch/Galloway and River Prairie Drive along the Eau Claire River. The applicant is Gerard Development LLC, along with others teaming up with this project. The request is to amend the general development plan for a mixed-use development for 4-story apartment building and a commercial building at this location. The area is about 3 1/3 acres in size. Comprehensive plan does show this as transitional, commercial and medium to high density residential. Existing zoning is C3 MX and P public. P public is primarily that along the river itself. And again, it's C3 MX, which is mixed use zoning, because this item was before you about this time last year for consideration for the project that's being requested to be amended here tonight. Again, as a recommendation, if the Plan Commission does find the general development plan consistent with the comprehensive plan, the Commission should approve this application with conditions. I should note the Waterways and Parks Commission met at their meeting last month on September 23rd and recommended approval. Final site plan will be required at a later date. So what you see before you as we go through this is very similar to what you saw last year in terms of level of detail as a general development plan, again with some preliminary elevations. So showing here again the hatched parcels are 2 parcels, the southernmost most recently being owned by the city, and then the northernmost, the triangle there, was privately owned, and again the applicant can address kind of the ownership situation, but from how they explained it, they are in control of all the properties in question. So with that, again, the proposed development would include 60 apartments and approximately 10,000 to 12,000 square feet of commercial space. So the 60 apartments would be the orange kind of boomerang shaped building you see there, more directly facing the river to the bottom right. The hatched area shows some of the steep slope areas, and again they're showing it as Outlot 1. That's again would be retained as parkland essentially along the river for future trail. And then the kind of trapezoid or triangular piece to the right, kind of at the hard corner there, River Prairie Drive and Birch Street, is the proposed 10,000, 12,000 square feet of commercial. Again, the project site is approximately 3 1/3 acres in size in total. Again, through this process, the land transfer is occurring as well. The city-owned parcel along the river, kind of shown as Outlot 1, is about 1.8 acres in size. The site plan does note that the new configuration of the proposed buildings would still be at least 40 feet from the property line, would be approximately 120 feet from the top of bank of the river. Again, this is noted to the Waterways and Parks Commission as well. We did include the Greenway guidelines just for reference, so you know that as proposed here, it still is meeting or exceeding those standards. Access to the development would be off of Birch Street, as you see here. Approximately half of the 113 parking spaces, or 54, would be underground. You can see kind of a connection into both buildings there separately. And 59 spaces would be provided as a surface lot. This is kind of more the more substantial changes from the previous plan, where vast majority of the parking was underground. And again, previously with the approved plan, the commercial element and the residential element were combined into one building. Again, separated uses, but still into one building. Again, the applicant perhaps can explain a little bit more specifically the need to separate these 2 uses, in part due to the state low-income housing tax credit program, and just again, even though the site itself still remains mixed use, the buildings here are physically separated, again, more intentionally as a result of the low-income housing tax credit program. Again, I should note that the applicant did apply for those and was unfortunately unsuccessful with the current year's tax credit. So again, that's the timing that you see before you here today, is to move forward with a similar request this next round. Changes again include, as noted, the separation of buildings, also reducing the number of residential units though from 80 to 60, and increasing the square footage from 9,000 to 10 to 12,000 square feet. Again, parking is being reduced just slightly, but 50 more spaces now are proposed to be added to the surface parking instead. Again, portions of Birch Street adjacent to the site do not currently have curb and gutter. Sidewalks will be required along all the streets here. They're showing that. Also proposed extension of trail along Birch Street as well. You can see there kind of highlighted. I'll show a little bit more specifically here. You can see the contour lines and utility access and things that kind of limit and constrain the site to its proposed configuration. Here are some of the newly proposed elevations, primarily for that residential component. Again, the commercial building at this point do not have site plan, or excuse me, building elevations for that yet. But again, this is the general development plan stage, so not required. But again, the applicant trying to show how the layout would look with the residential standalone building. Traffic impact analysis should be performed, and again, some of that has been done to a basic sense up to this point with the previous proposal, but again, engineering has provided some additional review and considerations for you as well here tonight. Again, there are quite a bit of slopes that are greater than 20 feet, or 20%, excuse me, but not within very close proximity. It looks a little bit closer here on this drawing, but again, it does meet or exceed the minimum standards for setbacks. Again, those approvals though do have some additional layers to them, again with the Regional Planning Commission and the DNR as well, both weighing in on that. So I did want to mention that. It is located along transit, so there's that access still at this point. But again, a lot of those things still remain the same as last time, but again, there's significant enough changes here warranted coming back for your consideration. Again, primarily the change in the configuration of the parking, separation of the two uses into two separate buildings, and then again the reduction of the residential unit count from 80 to 60. So with that, stand for any questions. I know Mr. Paul Gerard should be on the line as well. He did want to provide some comments to you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission for Mr. Allen? Mr. Christopherson?
Thank you, Chairman Larson. Mr. Allen, were there any particular comments made in Parks and Waterways Commission about this project?
There was some, great question, more referencing some of the design. Again, that's part of the purpose of the elevations that are provided, is that's the portion of the site that's more adjacent to the river. There is some potential concern for material types and things of that sort, but again, as the site plan comes forward, it's likely, if not mandatory, that will go through that process again to Waterways and Parks. So really, we wanted to focus on the plan, the site plan itself, and so that was the majority of it. I think there was also, again, whether or not this is the highest and best use for this location, and again, just I may defer to Deputy City Engineer Leah Ness as well with regards to future trail use and connections. A lot of that has not been identified on the city side yet to this point. So I think there are a few gray areas and questions, but again, more on the city side than the actual applicant side.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Gregor?
Thank you, Chairman Larson. Mr. Allen,
obviously this is a general development plan and not the site plan level yet, but I guess I'm a little concerned about some of the pedestrian connections being indicated, particularly when we get to that next phase of it. Because right now, none of the sidewalks connect to the actual public trail that's proposed, and I guess a part of that question is, if you look at the aerial version of the general development plan right there, it shows, I believe it shows the trail in yellow, showing it being kind of narrow, or is that, and then it also shows it veering away from Birch Street along the property line as opposed to in line with the road. I guess how much of that is important at this point? And how do you see the city working with the developer on making sure these pedestrian connections are made when we get to the site plan level?
Great questions. I know these were some items that we had discussed with the applicant with our initial proposal last year, and I apologize. I know it I've seen a lot of iterations of the trail situation here. Again, you're seeing both, or primarily I should say, the internal private trail connections and networks. So again, without, as I mentioned to Commissioner Christopherson, reference to her question, a lot of gray area yet on the city side. So I don't know if Leah is on the line, Mr. Chair, but perhaps she could respond to some of the questions with the trail and trail access. I know obviously topography is also a limiting factor here too.
Good evening. I can speak to the trail along Birch Street. We do have trail south along Birch Street that we would like to continue to the north. So we would work with the developer to have that placed within the right of way for that connectivity along those parcels. It's similar to installing sidewalk along a property when it's developed. So we would request that it meets our minimum trail width going north to the extent of their property line. And then again, when the site plan comes through, work with them on connectivity points to the trail for access, and especially with business being at one location closer to the trail on one end, and then potential access to other businesses in the area at the other end potentially. So having more than one access to that trail connection from the site overall. And then again, along the greenway space or the P public side of things, the city is looking at extension of trail. We have not done any engineering in that area yet to look at the steep slopes and the placement of that trail at this time. So that's something that we will be looking into further as well.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help answer questions?
Yeah, I guess just a follow-up maybe about that. I'm assuming the trail will follow a relatively consistent distance to from Birch Street.
That would be my intention. I would like to work with the company because they oversee the access points along Birch Street in this location.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Allen? I see none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gerard, are you here to speak on this item?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. So, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. I've heard some great questions and comments, and just to jump into a few of them, but before I do that, I just want to let everyone know on the Planning Commission that I'm joined tonight by Jason Griffinthrough and Mark Erickson with Everyday Engineering. So if there are technical questions related to engineering, Mark could answer those. But Just to answer a few of the questions that were brought up so far, it would be very important for us to have direct access to the trails because we have a opportunity on this site that we don't normally have, where we have a bus stop within 0.2 of a mile of our site. So we're going to want to see these residents being able to access that very easily with not a lot of barriers. And I think what we would also do along the trail along Birch Street is we would enhance and do some beautification and maybe even do some benches and landscaping so that that is much more aesthetically pleasing. So based on that, so I'm here to answer questions related to the project if you have any. Otherwise, if you don't have any, I would ask that I could address the Planning Commission on an additional issue related to this project. So I'll wait for direction.
Well, let's see if we have any questions from the commission first so far.
Sure.
And doesn't look like we have any. What's your additional issue, Mr. Gerard?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this project came through last year, and what actually happened was the commercial component that was included in the larger parcel was deemed as a little bit too risky for the state agency and ultimately the financing agency and the end owner. So therefore, what we did was we reduced the project accordingly in units, and then we broke the commercial component out and pulled it to the corner, thinking that that would provide maximum marketability for that piece. And the lower density would then reduce the impact, if we had any, on the river. So that's one of the reasons why we're coming back. But the other issue that I want to just chat briefly on is back in 2019, the City of Eau Claire Planning Commission and Council brought forward something that's referred to as your Capital Improvement Multifamily Affordable Housing Fund. That fund was scheduled to receive $700,000 in 2020 and $50,000 in 23, and then $500,000 in 24 for a total of $1,250,000. Of which I believe, after speaking with some of the leaders there, $200,000 of that money is been set aside or spoken for the creation of affordable housing for single family. And the establishment of this fund is referred to as gap financing that assists developers to create housing opportunities for the truly intended workforce housing wages. This project targets households that are in the 25% to 60% of your county median income. Those incomes are from $14,000 to $50,000 accordingly, depending upon the family sizes. The fund that I'm referring to also would aid homelessness that has been a priority in Eau Claire. What we would like to do is respectfully tonight put public notice out that we would like the Planning Commission to allow us to apply for $750,000 of that money in calendar year $375,000 in 2022 and $375,000 in 24. Here's why we believe that this project warrants the receipt of these funds. We selected our site way back in 2018 and 19 through an RFP process through the city of Eau Claire. The project was awarded through the RFP process and carried a minimum assessment of $6.5 million. The original intent of this project was to build market rate housing. After we have received a number of market studies, we understood the city's need for affordable housing, so we shifted our focus from market rate housing to affordable housing. Considering affordable housing, we understood that we would never be able to meet the minimum assessment outlined in the RFP, but we thought we should move forward in trying to create something moving forward. We also have understood that the project would fall short of your tax incremental financing because it would not meet the minimum assessment. Important to note that this site allows many advantages that I have explained a little bit, but I would just like to go into a few more of them. This site is on top of many, many employment opportunities that are located within a mile of the site. We are also located on a public transit stop, and we are also located on the Eau Claire's trail system. Unlike the projects that have come before you, we are targeting this project. 85% of this project will serve households that are at 25% to 60% of the county median income. We are serving a target audience that is why the housing fund was created. 80% households and up don't necessarily need help or gap financing. Therefore, they can truly leverage their project with the lender. Furthermore, our project will also serve disabled American veterans that fall within this income category of the development and will also receive supportive services specifically designated to each individual's need. And lastly, and most importantly, I just want to point out the fact again that we will be serving 10 apartments that will be set aside in this project that will serve homelessness and your homelessness population. We have collaborated together with Western Dairyland and WestCap, formerly known as Western Wisconsin Community Action Agency. These two agencies will also assist in collaboration at helping target and identify these homeless individuals and to help place them. Not only to help place them, but to also provide long-term screening where a lot of other municipalities have fallen short. That is why we truly believe that this fund was created, and therefore our project warrants this gap financing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll comment that the project you described seems well within many of the goals that our city council and our plan commission is shooting toward for the city of Eau Claire. The plan commission itself, though, doesn't have the authority to grant an application for that money. I think Mr. Allen is probably the right person to talk about the procedure for how he would go ahead and proceed with that application.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. And as I've explained to Mr. Gerard and his team on several occasions, again, this review process here is exclusively for the amendment to the general development plan, meaning the land use decision, as you've noted, Mr. Chair, and that financial modifications or amendments are not under consideration. That'd be something that the city council would have to take up separately. So, and again, that's been explained before, and it's been brought forward to the current administration. And again, there's consideration of the Affordable Housing Fund again, kind of a shortened name for this, that the Housing Opportunities Commission, it's just underway, will likely review in terms of how parameters and policies may occur with those funds. But as it stands now, again, as you noted, the Planning Commission does not have any standing to respond to that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that you wanted to have speak for this project?
Mr. Speaker, if I could just comment briefly, my request tonight was merely just to get it out there publicly so that I'm following the due process, requesting the funding through the Planning Commission, who could ultimately make a recommendation to council. I understand, and I would want to commend the city of Eau Claire for the establishment of this fund. There are many municipalities in the state that also have this funding source where developers can actually apply through a process of scoring and actually receive these types of fundings prior to the application for tax credits. Our application for tax credits would be due December 11th. So that's why I'm making the request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you need your Mr. Erickson to speak, or?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Gerard. Is there any questions from the commission for Mr. Gerard? Commissioner Gregor.
Thank you, Chair Larson. And thank you, Mr. Gerard, for bringing this in front of us again. I guess my question is about the opportunities we have with the bus system, and you may be aware that we're, by the end of this month, going to be having a transit development plan in front of the Transit Commission this Wednesday, and then also in front of the City Council, I believe, next week, although the agenda hasn't come out officially yet. And it's a plan that really lays out some of the vision for improvements to the transit system. And I think that there are, definitely some opportunities to, even include a bus stop, right in front of this building in the future, possibly for Route 4, although there may be some changes in the transit development plan as to what routes will go where, but and there still will be an Altoona route as well. So I'm just kind of seeing an opportunity to have a bus stop like right on Birch Street, potentially also one on River Prairie Drive on that side for maybe a different route. So I guess my question would be, is there you said you had an interest in benches and landscaping. Do you think you would also be interested in helping with the construction of a bus shelter or things like that?
Thank you very much for bringing that point forward. We did that exact fact. We participated with the city of River Falls to create a municipal transit stop right at our location. And we also provided a curb cut or a curb turn-in, so to speak, so that the bus could pull off of the main drag, so to speak. The city of River Falls did not request any additional funding from us for the shelter, but they did request a portion of our real estate. So we would actively work with the city to create that, because that is a huge benefit to our property.
All right, that sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission for Mr. Gerard? All right, I see none. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing, If there's anyone who has checked in to speak on this topic, please raise your hand. I see we've got one already. Oops. Ms. Mosley.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. I'm Judy Mosley at 2230 Trimble Street in Eau Claire. As the co-chair of the Jonah Affordable Housing Task Force, I'm always pleased to be able to support the efforts of developers who are dedicated to bringing affordable housing to our community. Tonight, I'm happy to endorse the efforts of Paul Gerard and his plans for a mixed-use development at the very entrance of our city. I appreciate the careful planning that's gone into making sure that the site and the river is protected and respected, as well as the dedication to affordable units that are safe and accessible by families and individuals with low and moderate incomes. It's important to note that this location is very near a number of businesses that employ individuals in this income bracket, but there is little existing affordable housing stock in the area. Gerard Development has made changes to this plan that are designed to make it more competitive for WIDA low-income housing tax credits, ensuring that the units will stay affordable. The changes include reducing the number of units to a more manageable 60 apartments and separating the commercial unit from the residential building. I appreciate the experience of this builder in designing buildings that are environmentally sensitive, energy efficient, with green spaces and community spaces for residents. I think that designing the building to maximize views of the river for residents proves that affordable housing doesn't have to be hidden out of sight. The addition of 60 units of affordable and workforce housing is so important that I think our community should do everything we can to support this plan. That includes the use of CIP funding that's been designated to support affordable multifamily housing development. The City of Eau Claire has made an important investment in developing multifamily housing, which we generally define as being housing that costs a family with an income between 30 and 60% of the county median income, no more than 30% of their monthly budget. We look forward to the development of a transparent application process that developers can use to access those funds. And we understand that it is imperative that that application process be rolled out as soon as possible so that developers can use that funding when they apply for WIDA tax credits. Gerard Development is requesting a large part of the $1 million the city has set aside, but it could well make the difference between a viable project and one that just can't make the numbers work. So please consider this commitment to successful multifamily housing development. I ask that you vote to approve the general development plan and assure the future of this important development.
Thank you, Ms. Mosley. Anyone else come to speak on this item? We have several call-in users. So I'll see if I can identify whether they're here for this. If you're calling in on a landline to talk on this item, please identify yourself. Right now I'm looking at caller user number 4. Okay. Now I've unmuted another landline. Are you here to talk about this item? All right, we'll go to the next one. One more person. If you call in on a landline to talk about this item at Birch Street, please let us know.
Not the Birch Street.
Okay, thank you. Which one did you call in for, just so I know when to call on you again?
The 312 development.
The 312 development, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
312. Oh, okay. All right, I see no one else. Ms. Mosley, you were done, right? Okay. We will see if there's a motion on the commission for this item. Mr. Wolfgram.
I will move approval to amend the general development plan. Thank you.
And Commissioner Greggert.
I second.
All right. Any discussion? Commissioner Wolfgram.
Thank you, Chairperson Larson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I strongly support Paul Gerard's project, and although not a part of our vote tonight, I wanted to give my perspective on the CIP funds. It's very difficult to separate out gap financing when supporting this development or any development that is targeted to meeting the 30 to 60% income range of those that need affordable housing the most. We've long known, and it's included in our Chippewa Valley Housing Task Force recommendations, that our greatest need for housing are for those community members whose incomes fall within the 30 to 60% range of the county median income, are housing insecure. I've had many conversations with developers who want to meet this need, but they're not able to do so without procuring the WIDA tax credits, and even then, the gap financing can be too overwhelming to pursue. Paul Gerard is proposing 85% of his units to serve households between 25 and 60% of the county median income. This project is serving a population that developers are not able to serve without private and public partnerships. We know that we cannot rely on WIDA tax credits to build housing for almost 40% of our workforce who are making at or less than $30,000 a year. And now, given the impact of COVID-19, it is very likely these numbers have increased. It is significant that for the first time in our city's history, that just over $1 million was designated for multifamily housing in the 5-year capital improvement plan. It's a relatively small amount when we're talking about gap financing to build affordable housing. And it is my hope over time that in our next CIP and subsequent CIPs that we will be able to allocate more funds in an affordable housing fund. But at this current time, this $750,000 can fill the gap between private funding and the low-income tax credits for Mr. Gerard's project. As Ms. Mosley commented, WIDA requires that developers have commitments for funding 85% of the cost of their development prior to submitting an application, this for the 9% tax credits. Mr. Gerard's application is due on December 11th of this year. I would support this request in raising this gap funding awareness tonight in the best interest of 40+% of our workforce that are struggling to pay the rent. Understanding that our city council would need to consider this separately, but I also support that we adopt a more formal, transparent application process in the future for these affordable housing funds. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else to comment on this item? Commissioner Greggert.
Thank you, Chair Larson, and appreciate the background on the requests from Mr. Gerard and the support I've been hearing. I'm definitely interested in hearing more about how the city could support that option. I guess part of my due diligence, in terms of background, I heard a reference to the land sale, the purchase agreement for the city part of the property. I guess I'd like to request that the Plan Commission receive a copy of that ahead of, it's basically this week if we can, before we see the the site plan, just because I think that might help us get more of the history behind the intention behind this property. Obviously, things evolve and new opportunities arise, and I see this, positively moving ahead in terms of focusing on the needs in the community and the specifics of this site. So I'm definitely going to be supporting the general development plan here, but also I'm curious about how we can further support this project. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Allen, can you respond to Mr. Gregor's request?
Certainly, we can find the information in terms of the purchase agreement and other documents. I know the applicant did provide a very thorough application packet. Again, kind of filtered that for ease of reference here tonight, but we can certainly provide some additional information as requested. And again, yeah, there has been obviously a change since this time last year, so certainly put together a little bit of additional kind of filling in the gaps as to what's happened since then, at the very least, in terms of land acquisition and other situations related to this project.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion from the commission? Seeing none, we'll call the roll on this item. Commissioner Christopherson.
Aye.
Seymour.
Aye.
Wolfgram.
Aye.
Gregor.
Aye.
Brenholt.
Aye.
Granlund.
Aye.
Prosnick.
Aye.
Obeyed.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That item passes. Thank you. Now, item number 6 is a public hearing for a recommendation to the City Council for rezoning from C2P and R3P with a general development plan for a multifamily building at the southwest corner of North Crossing and Mill Run Road. Mr. Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that. The mouse was not clicking. Number 6 on your agenda is the far west side of the community. The current zoning of the parcel is C2P, Neighborhood Commercial Plan Development. This area was rezoned in 2004, has remained vacant since then. This is the Westridge neighborhood, as many of you are familiar with. To the east is Care Partners, and Beehive Homes has rezoned in the last 5 years. To the west is the new Quick Trip that was built 2 years ago, and that was rezoned to C3P. This parcel has remained always vacant at C2P. This is within a master plan that was done in 2004. It went bankrupt in 2008, was rezoned in 2009, and over the years has seen slow development in single family. More recently has seen more development with the assisted living and memory care, along with the Quick Trip, and a few of the more condos to the southeast have been developed. Kurt, sorry about that. This is kind of stuck. Here's the parcel with the new maps. These maps are from 2018, late 2018. As you can see, Care Partners to the east is under construction, the Menards Corporation to the north, Quick Trip with the truck stop to the west, the retention pond to the west. To the south is an existing 4-unit condo with a master plan condo that I have included in this PowerPoint presentation this evening that was not included in your packet, but we'll talk about that shortly. And then you can see that as you transition to the south, it does convert into twin homes or duplexes and also single family. This evening we're reviewing a general development plan as shown on the screen. The applicant did submit an application for up to 56 units. On your screen, though, you only count 48 units, so potentially they could have the flexibility to add a few more. The development is under contract. The current owner is Quitrip Inc. There is a accepted offer contingent on zoning. The parcel is approximately 3.6 acres in size, and there is some field conditions that need to be met after if the Plan Commission and Council agree to approve this. So the development on the screen show 5 buildings. Now this has been revised by the applicant prior to the meeting. On Friday after they got the packet, you can see the amendment was to change one of the 12 units and make it go north-south rather than east-west. So that was one of the changes that have been made. But the density count is still the same at 48. And that was revised as of Friday afternoon. That did not make your packet, but more or less so a final site plan will need to be submitted at a later date, so that would, it's minor detail, but we probably should note that in the presentation this evening. As I mentioned, over the years, this area has developed. It's been slower development as this been platted in 2004, so you're talking, 16, 17 years now. An area that is slow growth within the community. Going over the rezoning would be to allow for the density. A final site plan would need to be approved by this commission at a later date. This request is near commercial to the west and to the north. North Crossing is a divided highway with traffic noise. When I visited the site a couple of weeks ago to put the sign out, the volume of traffic and the noise of the traffic definitely was an issue for residential. So that, as noted in previous presentations, we do put in our report about noise level. In particular, this area has a little more truck traffic with Menards Inc. to the north. They have provided a letter this evening as well. The neighbor to the south did provide a letter questioning the number of driveways that's proposed, and we'll get into that right now. They're proposing 3 driveways as shown. Staff has made the recommendation that 2 be proposed, but the neighborhood to the south is master planned out for 2 driveways as well. So that would be one thing to note. The condo owner to the south also noted in the letter about traffic impact as a one-way in, one-way out. Stonewood Drive is proposed in the future to be extended to the west, so that potentially would add a future phase extension. This street does dead end currently, as you can see on the screen. It does dead end just west of the existing condo to the south. Now, obviously, that next driveway over the extension road would have to come at a later date with a developer's agreement approved by the city council. For this request, this general development plan does show 3 proposed driveways. Staff is recommending 2. Also, a certified survey map is required to split off this parcel from the parcel to the west. In the past, this commission did talk about buffering and screening. As shown on the screen, there is quite a bit of distance between the existing parcel and the right-of-way along 312 North Crossing. So that could be an added condition, similar to the development on Jeffers Road and North Crossing that was reviewed earlier this year. Final, site plan as mentioned, engineering plans. This evening, a gentleman that was here, I believe he is on the call now, Mr. Chair, he was talking about the grading and drainage of the neighborhood. There is existing, on the parcel, let me go back a little. You can see just north of R on the drive, there is existing detention area on the site, and they're proposing to fill that in to allow for development. He was concerned about the existing stormwater in this neighborhood. You may remember the large discussion that we had with S.C. Sidursky and this particular neighborhood about the grading and drainage runoff. When there's a large storm event, the park is flooded. That is an ongoing issue that has not been resolved. Now, this year may not have been an issue, but We also haven't had the rainfall as previous years. So you wanted to bring that to your attention. He also was concerned about the amount of volume traffic for the 56 units proposed at the intersection of Mill Run Road and Stonewood Drive. I believe he is on the call. I did give him the information to call in this evening rather than speak in person. With that being said, in our report too is the stormwater, water utilities, grading and drainage would be addressed at a later date. With that, this would be a recommendation to the city council next Monday and the vote on Tuesday. With that, I'll be standing for any questions this evening for this general development plan rezoning.
Mr. Seymour.
Thank you. It may be in here and maybe I missed it. Was there a traffic analysis done, or what, was there anything done with that?
Yes, as to the question, I would defer that to Ms. Ness, who's on the call this evening.
That's a great question. That would be requested of the developer to provide a traffic impact analysis or an addendum of the traffic impact analysis that was completed for the larger development located to the southeast of this location. We do have information showing that the larger development proposed earlier this year, I believe, would not have impacts to the traffic signal at Mill Run Road, but at Stonewood Drive and Mill Run Road, there was not an analysis complete. So that may be something that we would ask for. We'd ask the developer to go through the initial review process similar to the WISDOT guidelines, depending on the number of trips that are being proposed for develop or by the development in this area.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gregor.
Thank you, Chair Larson. I guess this is a question for Ms. Ness as well with regard to transportation. I know that it doesn't appear, in my experience, that there are pedestrian actuated signals for crossing the North Crossing or Highway 312 at Mill Run Road or at North Town Hall Road to the west. So I guess, one of the things that we heard about in the narrative is that, this will be close to employment and provide some affordable options for workers in the area. And I guess my concern, not just after a recent tragedy on North Town Hall Road in the North Crossing where a pedestrian was killed this last weekend. In addition to that, just that historically it's been a dangerous place to walk and bike. So I guess my concern is a transportation analysis done of those types of crossings, and then I guess another question would be how does the uniqueness of the Mill Run Road and Stonewood Drive intersection, how does that get studied as part of a transportation analysis, considering it's kind of unique? Because I just don't know how an intersection quite like that can actually be determined to handle larger volumes of traffic versus what there is right now.
Okay, I can address those questions. First, I'll talk about the pedestrian connectivity across the North Crossing at Mill Run Road. Existing, there is not any pedestrian crossings across the North Crossing, and that is due in part to no sidewalk connectivity going north-south. Now, on the south side of 312, it is the city of Eau Claire, but on the north side, we're connecting into the town. So we would need to work with the town to have some sidewalk connectivity to have location for pedestrians to go to and from using the sidewalk and multi-use path infrastructure. I did reach out to the DOT today to ask them about their policies on that, and kind of in the same note, when the Quick Trip development went in at North Town Hall Road, pedestrian signal indications were added to the crosswalk on the east side of the intersection. And that's where the sidewalk facilities are located, at that location. So that does have a crosswalk at it. The Mill Run Road and the Keene Road do not. As we move forward working with the county on Keene Road for improvements, we are looking at a multi-use path or sidewalk in the area, so that would provide that connection on the south side, and we'd have to look at the north side of the street then to get that pedestrian crossing of 312. In the traffic impact analysis, we do ask that pedestrian and bicyclist accommodations are looked at and discussed. I did go back to the TIA that was completed for the previous development in this area and looked at the traffic counts that were taken at these locations. And during the 6 hours of data collection at both of the intersections, neither of them had pedestrian or bicyclist crossing them. And now I know that the infrastructure is not there for them to cross safely, so that may be one reason that they were not present during those count timeframes. And a lot of times it's looking then to our bike and pedestrian plan to look at the connections that are being outlined there and looking at future facilities for the development of those. Can you remind me what your second question? Oh, the second question was the analysis of Stonewood Drive intersection and Mill Run Road. As a traffic engineer for analysis, we look to the highway capacity manual for different types of analysis. You can analyze an intersection as a yield controlled, stop controlled, two-way stop controlled, depending on the lane configuration. And that's where we would go to look at the analysis at this intersection. It may be a two-stage intersection, very similar to some of the analysis that I've done previously in my former career on large, like state trunk highway crossings where you make your first stop, go to the median, yield, and then make your next movement. So it'd be analyzed probably as like a two-stage intersection, but it is something that we can do. Does that answer all of your questions?
Sure, I think so. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Petrie? I have one about the water issue that was brought up. So I'm looking at 3 areas here directly south of the one you were talking about where it says R3P. That's water, right? And then to the east of that, there's a long area right behind those houses. And then there's, you can see one more to the east of that, even that where you, are those the areas you're talking about that get flooded? Or am I not in the right universe?
I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Miss Ness knows. When I was out there, I can tell you all those have water. And even on the parcel where I was walking through, to the west, the Quick Trip Pond has water. On just north of the R, there's standing water there. And I know there's water to the south. Now, I think the gentleman that was here is probably on the call. He was talking about the park, which is just to the south of this. That gets flooded as well. Maybe Miss Ness has a little more information about these retention pond areas. I'm not sure, but Miss Ness, do you know more about the storm water facilities and the standing water currently?
My understanding is that the area that floods typically is actually just east of the map a little more, at the east end of the development, kind of like you had mentioned above the bulb that says Renee Court, just to the east of there is my understanding, near the park for that area.
Okay. Is there any concern we should have about that being made worse by filling that little spot in?
We are requesting that they provide their grading and drainage plan, and then they'd have to show us how they're going to accommodate the stormwater, the storage, and then the treatment of it with the development. So it's a typical analysis that we will work with that developer on. We as a city are looking at the overall area to just determine what's happening out there to address the flooding that we've seen previously.
So that part of the plan would come with like the site plan. Right now, we're just doing the general development plan.
Real quick, Mr. Chair, with the plan development, this commission can require that to remain open space. Just to keep that in mind, that it could be one of the requirements of the plan development. Now, obviously, this site plan that they're proposing obviously would have to change, but we were technically reviewing the general development plan that would be allowed for flexibility within that to allow for the density to be changed away from that existing wet area.
Okay. All right. Any more questions for Mr. Petrie? Commissioner Wolfgram.
Thank you, Chairperson Larson. This question is for Ms. Ness. Ms. Ness, I was wondering if you were going to be responding to the community members who wrote the email regarding their traffic-related concerns, or if that is something that the applicant will be addressing in a bit.
I can address a couple of the questions that may be of concern to the Plan Commission as well. One of the first questions was the concern about the Mill Run Road Street split and how it can handle the traffic. And that will be addressed with the traffic impact analysis that we are requesting of the developer. And that would also include an update to the traffic impact analysis that was completed previously for this area, which included the State Trunk Highway 312 and Mill Run Road analysis. Another question that was brought to our attention was the narrow street of Stonewood Drive, and that is currently 28 feet face to face. It has that allows for an 8-foot parking lane and then 2 10-foot travel lanes, which is common throughout the community. So I guess I would anticipate that there would not be parking on one side of the street, but parking on at least one side, not on the other side. And that allows for our 10-foot travel lanes in each direction, or a 20-foot travel lane for emergency access, which our emergency services require. And then another question, let's see. That was brought up was the number of driveways, and as Mr. Petrie had discussed earlier, the recommendation is to go down to 2 driveways at this location. But we do look at driveway location and spacing, which we have outlined in our comprehensive plan, which is typically what we would go off of for distancing and spacing of the driveway. I believe that addressed the main questions within the email that was received by staff members.
All right, thank you.
Did you have any further questions, Ms. Wolfgang?
No, thank you very much.
Commissioner Greggert.
Thank you, Chair Larson. Ms. Ness, I think this is a question for you. It's regarding the North Crossing again, but in our comprehensive plan, and in our bike and pedestrian plan, we are planning to eventually work with the state to build a trail, like a multi-use path along the south side of the North Crossing. And I guess, looking at this general development plan, maybe if we could go back to one of the previous images that we saw of it, maybe the other one that showed the quick trip, I think, or yeah, that would be a good one. I guess one of the concerns I have is the property lines, particularly at the quick trip, but also the west end of this property get pretty close to the highway. So I guess I'm wondering, especially if we're talking about potentially having earth berms or vegetation and a trail, and proper drainage and stuff like that, of course, do you feel like there's enough space there to bring a trail in, or do you think we should potentially be, asking for an easement to be able to bring a trail through as part of this general development plan?
When I look at this area or this map on the north side, I see a large area between the frontage road and the State Trunk Highway 312. Again, that's town to the north, so where the city limits are on the south side. And a trail, I think overall along this corridor would be on the north or south side, or I don't know that the state would put a trail on both sides. So I think it's more than looking just at this area, it's the whole corridor that they would be looking at. But I agree with you that we do need to look at the property lines for the potential of the berm, and if the berm would need to be on the private property, and how the roadway alignment looks with the trail system. I can provide a little more information from WISDOT in their response to me today regarding pedestrian facilities, and by their policy in conformance with the federal laws and policy, that requires that projects must give due consideration to establishing bicycle accommodations and pedestrian facilities on all modernization or reconstruction projects and most rehabilitation or pavement replacement highway projects, which are funded in part or in whole from state or federal funds. Right now, WISDOT does not have any of either of these projects planned in their 6-year program for this segment of 312, and therefore they don't have any plans to add bike or pedestrian facilities, sidewalks or trails along 312 in this area in the near term future. So just to give that background information for the short term, the next 6 years, there is not funding for a trail through this section, but it is something that is planned, and they will look at as they do a pavement replacement project or a reconstruction project in the future.
All right, thanks.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Petrie or Ms. Ness? I see none. Who should I call on as the developer?
Jason Grippentrog or Mark Erickson.
All right. Let's start with Jason. Jason, are you there? Wow. All right, we're going to mute him. Let's try Mark Erickson. Mr. Erickson, are you there?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this is Mark Erickson.
Okay. Hey, do you have anything to add to what Mr. Petrie said?
No, I really greatly appreciate your folks' time and consideration on this upcoming project. And I did want to address one thing with regards to the existing pond that is on this property. We have full intentions to recognize that pond's use, discharge, as well as relocating an appropriate area that would fit, and also work in concert with this site's build out. Yes, it's right under the middle of one of the buildings as we proposed it as now, but those things can definitely alter, and the development team is ready or prepared to make that slight alteration to work with and around that element.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Erickson? Commissioner Gregor.
Thank you, Chair Larson. Mr. Erickson, one of the concerns from staff is the number of driveways. Do you foresee a way to do what you want to do with 2 driveways as opposed to the 3 as proposed?
Great question, sir. Great question. The way we have it laid out, it does call for 3, does work well with 3. Like Ms. Ness said, I think we're going to have a lot more information when we do the initial review of the traffic impact analysis with regards to the street and the interchange and such. We would be meeting I believe, and I stand corrected, we would be meeting the driveway intersection and spacing requirements as this is laid out. It does pose a little bit of a challenge, sir, with regards to how the buildings do fit on the site and the amount of space we are allowed to work within, with the property being pretty short north to south per se. We feel that this provides reasonable access as we have it with 3 driveways, giving fire and rescue and all those folks a good opportunity to access the site unhampered, as well as easily when addressed to a certain building or a certain location on this whole property. So it's duly right that we revisit it. I think we'll know a lot more moving forward, sir.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Erickson? Thank you, Mr. Erickson. We're going to try check in with Jason here quickly and see if... Hello, Jason, can you hear me?
Hey, good evening.
Can you turn down your background? Do you have the volume up on your computer?
Mr. Chair, he may be on, if he's on a phone and his computer, that could cause that feedback. Yeah, it's happened to us before here.
Are you on your phone and your computer?
Are you able to mute?
I mean, he's muted right now.
Are the call-in users muted as well? Sorry, are the call-in users
How do you
muted as
pronounce
well?
his last name?
Grippentrop?
Grippentrop? Mr. Grippentrop, are you a call-in user? Try the next one here. Is this Mr. Grippentrop?
Yes.
Yes.
Can everyone hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, I'll get some feedback.
That's all right. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think everything's been covered. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I appreciate your consideration for the project and looking forward to bringing some more affordable units to Eau Claire.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Grippentraub from the commission? Mr. Wolfgram.
Thank you, Chairperson Larson. Mr. Grippentraub, are you aware of the email from Menards? And I was wondering if you could respond to that, or if this is not the appropriate place to respond to it, to let us know that you are in fact going to respond to it. Thank you.
I have not been received, nor have I seen any email from Menards pertaining to this particular rezone request.
Okay. Essentially, it wanted to comment that Menards does, their operation there produces some noise, and that it could affect your tenants.
Yeah.
Is that a concern that you have?
No, it does not serve a concern to me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And we'll move on to the public hearing portion. Thanks very much for calling in. So we'll start with what's on my screen is call-in user number 7. I spoke to you earlier and you said that this was the topic you wanted to talk on.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Hey, thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. I'll make it very brief. I know I got to start getting the kids ready for bed here, but I just wanted to bring up just a couple of quick concerns,
Mr. Chair,
many of them have already been addressed by the
address?
introduction, and I appreciate the thorough
Excuse me,
background here. But
excuse me, sir, one moment. Yes.
Sorry, can you ask her name and address, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I get your name and address?
Oh, sorry, Tim Santine, 4023 Mill Run Road.
Okay, thank you. Please continue.
Sorry about that. Well, yeah, and I think several of my concerns were addressed in the introductory remarks, and I appreciate that. But the concerns that I have, there are several. One is, we keep coming back to the traffic study. Just recently, the neighborhood, part of my neighborhood, I guess I'll call it part of my neighborhood, to the east was rezoned earlier this year to allow for 500 some odd apartments, with one access point from Kane Road, and then the other being Mill Run, which is going to terribly increase this traffic. And now we're looking to rezone something before there's an additional study done that says what that traffic impact is going to be. And with another 56, potentially more, units right there. Again, I have concerns about that, and it bothers me more than a little bit that we're so willing to approve a rezoning before we know what the facts are. And a couple things that have come up just about the retention pond over here, and I can't see the maps that you're looking at exactly right now. Apologies for that. But again, it was addressed. The problem that I've brought up numerous times since 2014 was the flooding of the park, because the city had originally, as part of this neighborhood development, planned to install an overflow valve in the pond so that the flooding wouldn't occur. Well, when the original developers went bankrupt and the whole plan kind of came to a close, that part to protect the park wasn't ever completed. And we've been assured again and again through all these other rezoning conversations that we have had in the last several years, that this would be done up and corrected. And, there's probably the better part of June every year that you cannot walk through the park because the trails, the walking paths are all under, 6-8 inches of water. And now, and this is sort of related here, they're expanding the other nursing homes just to the north of the pond, which, they've been great neighbors, but again, there's more building going on there, more potential runoff, and the problem still hasn't been fixed. And we're looking to create more problems without addressing and finding solutions for the issues that have been plaguing this neighborhood, for a while. And that was my concern. Again, I thank you for your time. And I appreciate this is the opportunity to be heard real briefly. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? All right, thank you, sir.
All right, have a
And I'm going to check with person identified on my screen as call-in user number 4. If you're calling in on landline, could you identify yourself? Oh. Okay. Any other persons logged in here to speak on this item of the general development plan at North Crossing and Mill Run Road? I see none. Is there a motion on the commission for this item? Commissioner Seymour.
Thank you. I would move for approval.
Mr. Wolfgram.
I will second, thank you.
Any discussion? Mr. Wolfgram.
Thank you, Chairperson Larson. I just want to say that I strongly support this rezoning. This affordable multifamily housing serves the lower middle income segment of employees in this area. For instance, warehouse workers at Menards who are making approximately $20 an hour and others in the area making up to $24 an hour. Without asking for any financial support from the city, we really couldn't ask more from a developer in the best interest of our city than to provide 100% of these 56 units as affordable housing at 60 to 80% of the county median income, with no market rate units, which would be starting above 80% of the county median income. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Christopherson.
Thank you, Chairman Larson. I simply want to echo the comments from our constituent that lives on Mill Run Road. I realize that the TIAs allow us the information to make the required improvements, but that's typically done outside of the public view. And when the development plan comes to Plan Commission, I would hope that some of this information will be very clear about how the drainage is going to be managed and what the improvement timeline would be for traffic management. I'm also very interested in hearing from the developer in their future plans about the noise abatement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Commissioner Gregor.
Thank you, Chair Larson. I guess maybe this is a question to Ms. Ness, but generally the commercial zoning that currently exists there, you know, obviously it depends on what that's used for, but typically would you say that, you know, commercial use would result in more traffic than this residential use?
I guess I would say in general, typically a business area would generate more traffic because you have customers coming in and out throughout the day. It really depends on the type of businesses that would be located or business that would be located in the area. And then depending on the development and the number of apartments or dwelling units that ends up in the development, that really shows the amount of trip generations that we're looking at as well. Looking at the connectivity to the area for bicycle and pedestrian access and transit route, all impacts that as well. So, same for residential versus business. So.
Okay. Whoa. Where's that coming from? Commissioner Brandholt?
Question, Mr. Prater?
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'd like to, if I could continue with some comments, I guess, ahead of the vote here too. Yeah, I think I can support this, although, you know, I am concerned about the, you know, how we're going to fit, you know, good pedestrian and bicycle connectivity around this project, both to the north and also to the east. But perhaps there could be some discussions with the developer about making sure that a trail could still fit in along the north crossing. Not sure what that would look like. It doesn't sound like that could be something I amend this to include, but maybe it could be part of the ongoing discussion between staff and the developer as to get to the site plan level. As well as that buffering question, because I do think the noise is pretty intense over there. So, but yeah, I plan to support it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ness, I have a question for you. I'm not sure I have the terminology right here, but our call-in commentator talked about an overflow valve for the retention pond at the park. Was that something that was to be paid for by the developer as part of that big development that went bankrupt?
Originally, that was part of the phase 1 or phase 2 of that development plan, and we have met out on site to look at that, and it is something that with the analysis for the development that was just approved previously, the SCS Swiderski development area there. We did work with the engineer on the analysis of that overflow and their stormwater as well. So we do have a plan to address that.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other discussion from the commission? All right, I see none. We will call the roll. Commissioner Christopherson.
Aye.
Seymour.
Aye.
Wolfgram.
Aye.
Greigert.
Aye.
Brenholt.
Aye.
Granlund.
Aye.
Prosnick.
I can't vote on this one because I work with her.
Okay. Obeyed.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. That item passes. Item number 7 is a public discussion for recommendation to the City Council to recommend approval of a 2-lot certified survey map with right-of-way dedication on the 400 block of Eau Claire Street. The City of Eau Claire and the Eau Claire Library are the applicants. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I continue with this item, just for notation in the minutes, we'll note Commissioner Prosnick has abstained in that last vote. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Item number 7, CSM 1020, which is, again, the Eau Claire Public Library, noted there in the center of your map. Just one simple drawing here for you tonight, showing the CSM itself. The existing zoning is P-Public. The area is about 1.6 acres in size. The request here is to approve the essentially, actually, technically a 2-lot CSM with right-of-way dedication for the library itself. The address again being 400 Eau Claire Street. The City of Eau Claire and the Eau Claire Public Library are requesting approval of the CSM jointly with the right-of-way dedication. Again, during the review process of the existing library site, it appeared that existing South Farwell Street encroaches onto the property. This CSM is to clean up the issue as the library is in the process of expansion, as you know. The CSM also adds Riverview easement along the Eau Claire River for a potential future trail. Again, the CSM recommendation here would go to the City Council for their meeting next week. So again, fairly straightforward. Normally this would be almost administrative in nature, but again, with the right-of-way situation and the dedication of that easement, it's before you for consideration as well as City Council. So let's stand for any questions.
Okay. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Gregor.
Thank you, Chair Larson. So, Mr. Allen, do you know how this ended up happening, or maybe this is more of a Pat Ivory question, maybe going back a long time, but it just seems, obviously Farwell seems to have been widened over time, and to a degree that I find pretty unreasonable personally, but did the widening of the road result in this, or did this did this happen after the library was already built?
All great questions. Sure, sorry. No, all great questions. I'm hoping Deputy City Engineer Leoness could also help weigh in on this. Again, engineering has been assisting with this process. I'm not sure if she has more to add with that.
That is a great question, Mr. Gregor. I do not know the history behind that. I would have to do some digging with our survey records and building records. I'm not sure why that would have occurred or how that would have occurred. So that is something I would need to look into further.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Allen? All right, thank you. The city is the applicant on this. So we will see if there's a motion. Commissioner Seymour.
Thank you. I move for approval.
Commissioner Christopherson.
I'll second.
All right. Did I miss something, Mr. Allen?
No, you're fine.
Okay. All right, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll. Mr. Christopherson?
Aye.
Seymour?
Aye.
Wolfgram?
Aye.
Gregor?
Aye.
Brenholt?
Aye.
Granlund?
Aye.
Prosnick?
Aye.
Obeyed? Commissioner Obeyed?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That item passes. Item number 8 is for public discussion for approval by the Plan Commission to recommend approval for a site plan for Dimension X design at 1262 International Drive. Mr. Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Number 8 on your agenda is the southwest part of town in the Sky Park industrial area. Number lot 4. The current property is vacant. It's approximately 1.4 acres in size, located in Sky Park Industrial Park. The zoning is I1P as in Paul for planned development. The applicant this evening is Advanced Engineering Concepts along with Durant Builders, requesting the site plan as shown on the screen along with the floor plans and elevations of the proposed building. The footprint of the building is approximately 18,600 square feet. There is an additional 5,000 square foot for future expansion to the north of the building, along with some pavement extensions. The site plan that would be approved this evening does include that potential expansion in a later date. The proposed building is shown in the elevations. The parking is based on employees and customer need. The applicant is proposing 33 stalls, and during peak hours is 17. The revised site plan, as shown on the screen, shows a 42-foot wide driveway on the west side of the existing, or of the proposed parking, they did have paved area for parking and striped. Staff would prefer them to reduce that down to a reasonable 30 feet. And at that point, the applicant was hesitant. They said it was needed for truck movement, but staff believes that 30 feet, I still think that's extremely wide for an area that does seem like an unnecessary paving. In the letter to the applicant, we are proposing that to be reduced down to 30 feet. That's still 2 lanes plus some in our opinion. The property does have one access drive to International Drive. The landscape plan does show a mixture of street trees and foundation plantings. A pedestrian link should be added to the front door to the public sidewalk. The grading and drainage, utilities, and traffic and transit's noted in your report. I will go over, this used to be within the covenants of Sky Park. Some of you may remember that this commission, along with the city council, abandoned those covenants. It is now under the GDP, or planned development, for the light industrial area. Sky Park was platted, as I always say, before I was born, which is kind of crazy to think about, and it's still not developed. So that's why we got rid of the covenants. But the neighborhood did receive a copy of the site plan. We didn't receive any comments. They used to be the ones to review the site plans and building materials and things like that. Instead, this commission has the authority over that. Staff believes it does meet the standards of Sky Park, plan development standards, and would support the project with the conditions as noted. As you can see, it's just south of these solar fields to the north. With that, I'll be standing for any questions this evening.
Okay, any questions from the commission for Mr. Petrie? I see none. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Commissioner Seymour.
Thank you. As far as that driveway goes, if we move for approval with staff recommendations, that would take care of that issue. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. They'll have to revise that and then make it open space or lawn area, be 12 foot by, I'm not sure the length of that, but it's a significant amount of paving that would be reduced from the site. We believe that truck traffic and or delivery, UPS, any of those would have plenty of room at 30 feet wide, even if it's an 18-wheeler truck.
Good enough, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the commissioner for Mr. Petrie? All right, thank you. Is Mr. Erickson the right person?
No, this is advanced engineering concept.
Oh.
I don't know who's on your list, or somebody from Dren Builders may be the one.
Chad Griswold, Drew Davis, John Fox, Josh Weinke, Matt Apple.
It could be Matt Apple. There you go.
Mr. Apple, are you here to speak on the on this item?
Could you repeat the question?
Are you here to speak on Dimension X design?
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Okay.
Good evening.
Anything to add to what Mr. Petrie had to say about it?
No, we accepted the determination on narrowing the pavement down. That was an idea of having additional parking on the west side, and then it was deemed that they really don't need that much parking, and so yeah, we'll narrow the 42 feet on the west down to 30, and that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Is there anyone else that's called in tonight that you want to speak as for the applicant?
I believe the applicants were going to be logged in. I'm not sure if they're here or still not, or.
Do you have any names?
That would have been, let me see here.
Chad Griswold,
Yep, Todd or Drew?
Drew Davis?
Yes.
Okay, I'll call on. Mr. Davis, do you have anything to add? Drew Davis? All right, he's got nothing. I don't know what happened to Mr. Davis, but he didn't respond. Well, okay, so we'll move on. I think we have enough information to talk about this, so thank you, Mr. Apple.
Yes, sir.
Is there a motion from the commission? Commissioner Seymour.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion for approval with staff recommendations.
Okay. Is there a second? Commissioner Gregor.
I second.
All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll again. Mr. Christopherson?
Aye.
Seymour?
Aye.
Wolfgram?
Aye.
Gregert?
Aye.
Brenholt?
Aye.
Granlund?
Aye.
Prosnick?
Aye.
Obeyed.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. That item passes. Item number 9 is a public discussion for approval by the Plan Commission to recommend approval for a site plan for Associated Bank at 2425 London Road. Mr. Petrie.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Number 9 on the agenda is located on the east side, off of just south of Claremont, London Road, and then 53 Hastings Way pass is to the east. This is the third time this commission has reviewed this site plan. They're going to propose now a single-story 3,600 square foot, or that's what they were proposing originally. The Plan Commission approved that back in June or August of 2018. In June of 2020 of this year, they reviewed and approved a 2-story, 8,500 square feet. The applicant now is proposing a 1-story, 4,300 square feet, which is a significant change from the 2-story. The single-story building, as shown on the screen, would have 3 lanes for drive-through and then 1 ATM. Landscape plan showing. This is a part of a larger development to the north. That building would be removed. Panda Express would be going in there, and that's still part of this concept. Same developer, they would build both of these and then turn them over to the tenants. They are proposing some shared parking on the east side of the parking lot, and the bank showing with the drive-through, and then Panda will have a drive-through as well. Floor plans and elevations are noted in your packet attached here. Elevations as well, showing the proposed Associated Bank. My understanding is, and John Fox with the development team is on the call this evening, this is a consolidation of 2 Associated Banks, the one on London Road and the one on Hastings. They do have a large transaction with the customers. This evening they're proposing 26 total stalls. Based on the square footage and the narrative that was provided, typically that would only require 15 stalls. Staff is in between on this one. That is a lot of paving for a bank, and I don't know, with COVID and everything else going on, I don't know how many of you go to a bank, but 9 times out of 10 probably you're not going inside anymore. So we left it up to this commission this evening to decide if 26 total stalls is appropriate. The applicant can clarify more about that. Now, 4 of those stalls would be shared with Panda, but during peak demand for Panda Express, in my opinion, is usually during lunch or evening hours after a bank closes. Usually a bank closes at 5 or 6, depending on the branch. That is well over 125%, as noted in our report. This commission does have the authority to make recommendation and or add conditions of approval. Staff left it up to this commission to decide that. We did reduce the driveway width. As you come into the heading north after you pass the bank, they are showing a double arrow at 24 feet wide. That should be reduced down because that is technically only one way. 24 feet is significantly wider than what you see for a one-way. The applicant is, we would just make that change. The applicant is requesting that to be 16 feet wide instead of, we said 12 feet in our report. So that would be one of the changes that staff is okay with. This commission will need to decide if 26 stalls is appropriate for a bank with a drive-through. To keep that in mind. In the report also is grading and drainage, public utilities, transit, and traffic. This development, again, will require a certified survey map that should be administratively approved by staff as they amend the lot lines. Also, the city's asking for a permanent easement for the sidewalks along London Road because that would be on private property. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions this evening.
Any questions from the commission for Mr. Petrie? I see none. Commissioner Gregor.
Thank you, Chair Larson. Mr. Petrie, like say for example, 4 stalls were, like if this was reduced by 4 stalls or so, like what would staff work with the applicant on which 4 stalls those are, or how does that typically play out if the commission were to make such a move?
Sure, excellent question, Commissioner Greyer. The commission can direct the applicant to remove 4 particular stalls. It would, you may want to clarify with the applicant which stalls they would be. Just looking at it briefly, have removed 4 stalls, it would make sense potentially that the 4 one-way stalls as you head into the drive-through be turned into open space. But that's only 3 stalls, so then you'd be losing 1 more. Excellent question for the applicant to be asked as well, in my opinion.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Petrie? I see none. Thank you.
Thank you. John Fox.
Mr. Fox, can you hear me?
Good evening. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Anything to add to what Mr. Petrie said?
I do have a few things. So good evening, Plan Commission and Chairman Larson. Mr. Petrie, thank you for the introduction. My name is John Fox. I'm the project manager for the project for Rinka and the Architects Associated Bank. Also joining me are Chad Griswold, the principal in charge of financial projects for Rinka, Ryan Birchbach, our project engineer with Kapoor, who is our civil engineering partner on the project. And I believe also Steve Rolfe from Midland Commercial Development Corporation, our developer, will be happy to answer any questions as we go through this.
Okay.
The rationale, let me just give you a little bit of the rationale for how we ended up with the parking count we have. This bank, as proposed, is 4,360 square feet. It is a retail bank, as noted, 3 drive-through lanes and 1 drive-through ATM lane. This branch is substantially larger than a typical retail branch is, and that's to accommodate the large transaction count at this location. This location will be consolidating existing branches at Mall Drive and Regis Court for their retail operations, and we are expecting to have between 9,500 and 10,000 transactions a month at this location post-COVID. To Mr. Petrie's comments, as far as the bank is concerned, we are planning for a return to a post-COVID world, and the investment Associated Bank is making in its markets shows that commitment to, getting back to maybe not business exactly as it was, but we are expecting business in the branch to be bustling as soon as we get through this. With 10,000 transactions a month, this will be one of the top 10 busiest retail branches in Associated Bank's 240-plus branch network. And as we look at the slides here, we can see that we can see the request on the parking. As the Architects for Associated Bank across the 3 states they provide retail banking in, we've learned from experience that a more typical sized branch bank, only about 3,000 square feet, needs to have about 24 parking spots to be optimally efficient. A branch of that typical size, 3,000 square feet, would have at least 5 fewer employees than the 15 employees who will be working at this particular branch. At the moment, the Mall Drive location, which is much smaller than this, has 21 parking stalls and is chronically underparked. Staff routinely have to park off-site to keep parking spaces available for customers. The amount of transactions happening at Mall Drive right now is just over half of what we are expecting at this location. As Mr. Petrie mentioned, we have designed for 26 parking stalls, which exceeds the 19 permitted for the site. 4 of these stalls are shared with the Panda Express restaurant to the north. If the city had less restrictive parking regulations, we would certainly be asking for more due to the high transaction count at this location. That said, we will want to work with the city of Eau Claire to find a workable solution to getting parking that we need for a functioning branch while being respectful of the parking that is available to us by code, and keeping in mind that if we were only permitted the parking by code, we would only have 4 spots available for customers at this entire branch. And to tack on to Mr. Petrie's other comments about the one-way lane, we are happy to reduce the size of that based on feedback from our civil engineer. He feels that 16 feet would be the best size for this, so that if a car isn't pulled in to park all the way, you can still back out and get around it without striking the curb behind it. Thank you for your time, and should you have any questions, as mentioned before, I'm happy to answer them, as with anybody else on our team here on the call.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission for the applicant? All right, I see none. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Is there a motion? Commissioner Christopherson.
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Commissioner Prosnick. All right, any discussion? Commissioner Granlund.
Are we then voting to allow the layout as drawn? I didn't get a chance to look back at the recommendation letter, or are we adopting staff recommendations, or are we allowing the full parking allotment as described?
I think the only staff recommendation on the proposal right now is changing the width of that entry driveway. As far as the parking stalls, right now we're voting on this site map. So that would include all these parking stalls unless it was amended.
Thank you.
Mr. Gregor?
Thank you, Chair Larson. I mean, I do appreciate this, the layout of this, site plan compared to, what we often see is sometimes we don't see the, the full pedestrian connectivity. We don't see the location of bike parking. So in this case, we're seeing that. We're seeing a lot of street trees and landscaping. We're seeing some green space left open. So I want to show my appreciation for that. You know, obviously I'm not one to be super happy with over parking an area, but I do see the demand at a place like this. Obviously having you know, the future building to the north, you know, there's other opportunities for shared parking. You know, especially, you know, there is a sidewalk heading to there's two sidewalks heading to that north property that people could use to be able to access that. So, but yeah, I guess I don't see like a huge need to amend this at this point to try to reduce the parking, because I think overall the applicant has done a good job of being responsible with the site and providing some green space and landscaping and pedestrian connectivity. That makes a lot of sense. So that's kind of where I'm at on it. So I plan to support it as is.
Thank you. Commissioner Christopherson.
Thank you, Chairman Larson. This is such an immense improvement over the status of this property over the past decades that although it may not be what we would want based on standards, I think that their support of the demand based on their experience in a number of locations supports the number of parking spots, and it really does improve the green space, reduces the hard spaces in this lot. I would be able to support it. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, I see none. We'll call the roll. Commissioner Christopherson.
Aye.
Seymour.
Aye.
Wolfgram.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Brenholt.
Aye.
Granlund.
Aye.
Prosnick.
Aye.
Obeyed.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. That item passes. Item number 10 is a public discussion for approval by the Plan Commission to recommend approval for acquisition and site approval to the Housing Authority at 3128 Delbert Road. Mr. Jonathan.
Good evening. Do we have a camera, or are we in your presentation?
There it is.
There we go. Perfect. All right. The Housing Authority is seeking site approval for the purchase of 3128 Delbert Road in Eau Claire. This property is on the north side of Eau Claire, just off Anderson Drive. This is a private sale. The assessed value is $163,500. We offered the owners $156,000, which was accepted. The appraisal was ordered, but hasn't yet been completed or received. It is a 3-bedroom home and is in very good condition. Because of that, major rehabilitation will not be necessary. Because the house was built in 1998, we don't have to worry about lead issues, but we will check for asbestos and remediate where necessary and look for and address any code issues. We're also having a review done to make sure that there are no environmental issues. The reason for that is because it is close to a railroad track and it is close to the airport. We try not to concentrate any of our housing projects within close proximity to one another when making purchases. The Housing Authority does not own or manage any units in this vicinity. We do have properties on Runway Avenue, which are about half a mile to the north of us at this property. We plan to use Housing Authority homeownership funds to complete this purchase. So we are before you here tonight because by state law, the Plan Commission must provide site approval for any Housing Authority acquisitions. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission for Mr. Jonathan? There are none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve? Commissioner Seymour.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval.
Okay, that's Commissioner Brenholt. Commissioner Seymour.
Second.
All right, any discussion? I see none, so we'll call the roll. Commissioner Christopherson.
Aye.
Seymour.
Aye.
Wolfgram.
Aye.
Greigert.
Aye.
Brenholt.
Aye.
Granlund.
Aye.
Prosnick.
Aye.
Obeyed.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, that item passes. Thank you. Item number 11 is future agenda items and announcements. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only item for announcement tonight, well, actually two, just scheduling. The next meeting is scheduled for Monday, November 2nd. That is the day before the in-person election day. The meeting after that is Monday, November 16th, and that would be the anticipated next work session for the comp plan. But as discussed during that work session, certainly if there are any additional comments, questions, input between now and then, certainly let staff know. And again, we can certainly have additional information provided out to the Plan Commission between now and then as well.
Okay. Commissioner Christopherson.
Thank you, Chairman Larson. I just want to confirm, that's at 5:30? That work session is at 5:30?
That would be the intention, but again, if there's a preference to meet sooner than that, we're here. So it's certainly open to meeting sooner if preferred. Exactly. So we'll anticipate 5:30, but if there's interest or desire to meet sooner, that's certainly an option as well.
And that's on the 16th.
Correct. That's showing here on the calendar, November 16th, which is would be your second meeting in November.
Okay. And just as a reminder to commission members, if there are people you're aware of who might have valuable input for our midterm review of the comprehensive plan, Tuesday, November 2nd would be a great night for them to come.
Or Monday, November 2nd.
I'm sorry, Monday, November 2nd.
No, I understand. We all have Tuesday, November 3rd in our heads. Certainly.
Yeah. Okay. With that, if there is no objection, we will adjourn.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.